Dear Toastmasters, a very happy new year to you all, and welcome to the January edition of the Pathways Training Program organized by the Program Quality Directors team. I'm Kasun Ilangaratna, and I will be your host for this evening. First, let me take a few moments to walk you through some of the resources and guides that we have from the previous sessions that we had during the previous year. So I will be sharing these links in the chat window with you as well. But you will have resources to help you out with the pathways and organizing the competencies by the various paths, the FAQs on pathways, doing evaluations and enrolling into pathways sessions, into your paths. We've had sessions on the responsibilities of Basecamp managers, on organizing your scripts, on your speaking voice, and on uncovering the path. And also our previous session in December, we had 2 sessions on a moment in time, the art of storytelling, and also a black ant in a dark night. 3 things you didn't know about a great script. So with that, I also have one more announcement to make today, which is that if you haven't already done so, please do go ahead and claim your free path that is valid until March of this year. So you have another almost 3 months ahead of you to think about it and select any pathway that you like. And if you select it within this time period, you will get it free of charge. That is applicable for members who renewed their membership in the October cycle, not for those who joined as new members for the first time in that cycle. So it's only for members who renewed that membership. So if you renewed your membership in that time period, please do go ahead and find your free pathway, whatever it is, and go to the Toastmasters website and select that free pathway. And with that, now we usually work with our body and we talk with our words. But today, we will be having 2 champion speakers from District 82 who will show us how we can talk with our body and we can work with our words. As Peter Goober said, your body language, your eyes, and your energy will come through to the audience before you even start speaking. Today, to tell us about how we can let our body talk, we have a very special resource person here with us today. She is the head of Club HNB, which is HNB's private banking unit, and she's also a past president of the HNB Toastmasters Club and has also been the second runner-up at the District International Speech Contest in 2015, and she has been within the top 12 in 2019. She's also been placed in the top 6 in the Humorous and Evaluation Contest of District 82 in 2017. Please join me in welcoming Toastmaster Michelle De Silva to enlighten us on how to let your body talk. Toastmaster Michelle, over to you.
Good evening, Toastmasters and friends. I'm Michelle, and today we will see how our body talks. And in this presentation, we will explore 3 things. The first is why body language is important for a public speaker. The second is the different elements of body language. And third is how we can use these different elements to become more effective speakers. So thank you, Kasum. We'll first get on to the first point and start with the why. Now, in that first video that I shared at the beginning of the presentation, you saw Rowan Atkinson, more famously known as Mr. Bean, perfectly demonstrate how body language alone can tell a story, can share a message, and even entertain us without uttering a word. Now, there have been many studies done on body language, and it has been established that body language contributes to 55% of our communication. 38% is our voice and our tonality, and the balance 7% is the actual words spoken. So let's do a quick exercise, and I want you to observe your current body language, how you're sitting or standing right now. Don't move, don't flinch a muscle. Just check whether you're slouched in your chair or whether you're sitting up straight, whether you're frowning or whether you're smiling. And if I take a photo of you right now, would you look friendly and approachable? Or would you look like, don't mess with me? See, the truth is that many people infer a lot from body language, and it affects how people think and how people feel about us. Now, there is this really good TED speech by Amy Cuddy, and I would encourage you to go and take a listen to it sometime. It was shared by a friend, and now I'm sharing it with you. It's about your body language may shape who you are. And it truly tells how body language plays such a big part in how other people perceive us and also how we perceive ourselves. Now, in public speaking, body language has the power to help your presentation and also to harm your presentation. It helps your presentation if you use your body language to your advantage well. It harms your presentation if you let it get the better of you. Now, most often when we're asked to give a speech or a presentation, the first thing all of us think about is what to say. And we spend so much of time and effort on our content, on what we want to say, that we very often neglect how we want to say it. So let me share with you now the 5 elements that I want to discuss with you today of body language that can help you actually deliver your speech effectively. So the 5 elements are: first, your facial expression. Second is your gestures. Third is your eye contact. Fourth is your stage movements. And fifth, your posture. So let's begin with facial expression. Now, you can have the most brilliantly structured speech and have the most compelling story, which has a plot, which has conflict, resolution, and a perfect message to go with it. But if you have this deadpan face, like a monotone voice, it doesn't show your involvement in the emotional response to the experience you want to share with your audience. Now, the trick here is to let your face tell the same story as your words. And if you give the wrong impression on your face, it can only undermine your message. For example, if I want to say how delighted I am to be doing this presentation today, I could say, thank you for inviting me here today. I'm really honored to be doing this presentation for you. And although I'm saying I'm honored to be doing this presentation for you, my body language doesn't really reinforce that message. So what we would like to do is that if we really, truly believe in what we say, if we understand what we are saying, the message that we are trying to convey, then automatically we display the appropriate facial expression that we want to display. So this connection, that as a speaker, the connection that we have with our words is what actually helps us to bring our words to life, that make our stories utterly personal and help us to share the emotions, all these emotions that come out of the stories that we share. We're able to share this with our audience through our facial expressions. And that is what creates a bond with the audience, a strong bond. So now I'd like to share with you 7 universal facial expressions that we use in our speeches all the time. The first is surprise. Now, when you look surprised, your eyebrows are raised, your eyes widen, mouth open. So that's a surprise look. Fear. Now, fear, again, your eyebrows are raised, but they're also pulled together because you have to have this worried look on your face. Raised upper eyelids and a tense lower eyelids. That's what makes that your eyes reflect the fear. And of course, your lips stretched back. So disgust. You have your nose wrinkled up and your upper lip raised. Absolute disgusted. Contempt. Contempt sees the lip, your upper lip raised on one side. So that's a contempt look. A look of contempt. And now anger. So your eyebrows down together in the center. Your eyes glaring. Narrow the lips. That's an angry look. When you're sad, you have the drooping eyes on either side. Your eyes lose focus. It's not direct like when you're angry. Slight pulling down of the lips. And finally, when you're happy. When you're happy, you see these crowbars at the side of your eyes, and also your muscles right around your eyes that orbit your eyes, they're all stretched because you're smiling and your cheeks lift up. That's your happy look. So these 7 are universal facial expressions. And I would suggest that if you stand in front of the mirror and you try making these different faces, then it might actually come naturally to you when you are making a presentation. So it's good to actually look in the mirror and see exactly how you look. Because sometimes you think you're looking sad or you think you're looking angry, but you may have a slight smile on your face. You want to show contempt and you might actually be looking sad. So looking at a mirror and rehearsing and practicing these different looks will certainly help. Our second element of body language is gestures. And hand gestures are a big part of engaging with the audience. Purposeful gestures will complement and reinforce our message, whereas awkward gestures will only be a distraction. So today I'd like to talk to you about 4 types of gestures: the descriptive gesture, the emphatic gesture, suggestive gestures, and the prompting gestures. So first, the descriptive gestures, as it says, it's about describing something. So you can say something is as big as or small as. So for example, we can say someone had a big heart, or it was like a little bird. So you can show size, you can show movement from here to there. You can show whether it was straight or whether it was crooked. You can show that we were in a circle. You can show that it was a box. You can show numbers, 1, 2, and 3. So these are all descriptive gestures. Emphatic gestures are emotional gestures, gestures that you make to emphasize or stress on words. Like when you want to say that you're happy, I'm happy to be here, you keep your hand on your heart. Say, I'm happy to be here. So when you keep your hand on your heart, it means that it's heartfelt and that sincerity is displayed. If you want to say you're angry with someone, then you have your clenched fist and say you're angry. This is also for power and, of course, victory. So these are all emotional emphatic gestures. If we want to make a suggestive gesture is about your mood or your expression. So if you want to say, I welcome someone into my home, or I welcome someone into the room, we open out our arms and say, welcome someone. If we want to say I was in the sweltering heat, I can put my hand on my forehead and say sweltering heat. So something that describes your mood or your expression. And the final one, the prompting gestures, are when you prompt the audience to do something. So Dhananjay did this really well in his championship speech when he said, raise your hand. If you know of a sensitive mom or a cool dad. So you're asking the audience to raise their hand. Or when you ask the audience to stand or clap or sit, these are prompting gestures. Now, here's the thing to remember about gestures. When you're really nervous, when you don't know exactly what you're going to say, you tend to use your hands unnecessarily. And these are distractions. You don't know what to do with your hands. So the best thing would be to keep your hands on either side of you and then use them as descriptive or one of the other types of gestures that we spoke of purposefully. Because if not, we will be tempted to either stick our hands in our pockets or start fidgeting with a tie or a dress, clasp our hands in front, and all of these awkward gestures are signs of nervousness. So when we do talk about gestures, know what you're about to say, and this will always help you to complement your gestures better. Use open gestures, the open palm gestures. So we avoid pointing or showing the back of our hand, but use the open palm because this is more endearing, it's more accepting, soothing to the audience. And finally, smoother. Smoother implies better practice so that it looks more natural, it comes without being too abrupt. This is our third type of body language, eye contact. This is Darren Tate, and in his winning speech, his eye contact was immaculate. Now, eye contact is a must. Doesn't matter whether your audience is a large audience or whether it is a small audience. Now, if it is a large audience, obviously, you can't look at everyone eye to eye. So what is suggested is that if it is a large audience, you'll take sections. So you take your left section, your right, and then your center. And when you look at one section, you try to scan the audience so that everyone in that section is visible. That way you cover the entire audience. But if it is a smaller audience, then you can actually look at everyone eye to eye. And you've heard that old adage about how the eyes are the window to our soul. So when we connect with our eyes, there is an instant connection. And people can feel whether you're sincere or not. So if you can hold your gaze for a few seconds with your audience, then you immediately begin to build credibility and trust. But of course, holding that gaze a little too long might be a little too weird and might make your audience uncomfortable. And that's not what we want to do. We don't want to scare or intimidate our audience. So be mindful about how long you look at one person in the audience. But looking at your audience while you're speaking will always radiate that you're confident about what you're speaking. And that will make it easier for the audience to accept what you're saying. We now move on to the fourth element of body language, which is stage presence. Now, the stage is yours for the asking, so make the best use of it. Using your performance area to bring your story to life is really important. And when you move purposefully on stage during your speech, it tells the audience that you're comfortable in your own skin. Now, choreographing your movements beforehand, practicing and rehearsing those movements on stage will always help, because then it'll look a lot more natural, a lot more smoother transitions, and wouldn't look like you're just moving around for the sake of it. Standing still on stage is also necessary. And this is especially necessary when you're going to deliver an important message or an idea. When you stand still, the entire audience is focusing their attention on you. And that makes it the perfect moment for you to deliver your message or to hit them with that great idea. But when you stand still and don't really do anything, don't say anything, that is a sign of nervousness. And that will also constrict you. And you might find yourself, swaying or rocking or even shifting from your weight from one foot to the other. So when you take your position on stage, always stand in the center, have your feet slightly apart, but don't lock your knees. Instead, relax your knees. Standing straight, and then you begin your speech and move purposefully so that you make use of that entire stage. And our final element of body language is your posture. Now, posture is how you sit or stand. Standing tall, standing straight with an open posture on stage radiates confidence, competence, control, and courage. Standing straight is not difficult, right? You pull your shoulders back a little bit, you tuck in your tummy, and you lift your chin so that you can see the entire audience. And that posture also helps you breathe better. When you slouch it looks as if you have, the entire world on your shoulders. So don't slouch. And when you stand straight, it's easy to breathe from your abdomen, your upper abdomen, and not the shallow breaths that you take from your chest, because that will also help you project your voice better. But you're going to hear about voice immediately after this presentation from Chamin, so I'm not going to steal his thunder. But the point I'd like to make at this point is that a good posture will not only relax you and give you that sense of confidence and command on stage, but will also enable better breathing, which will help you in your voice projection. So let me summarize now. Why body language is really important for public speaking is because body language affects how people think and feel about us. And body language has the power to help your presentations or hurt your presentations. So there are 5 elements that can help you control that. The first is your facial expression. And if you mean what you say, then the appropriate facial expressions will automatically be displayed on your face, and you will be able to share all the emotions in your stories, in your speeches with your audience and build that strong connection. The second is your hand gestures, and purposeful hand gestures will always complement and reinforce your message. The third point was eye contact. And eye contact is a must, no matter what size your audience is, because eye contact will always help build trust and confidence. The fourth is your stage movement. Stage movement is so that you can use your performance space to bring your story alive. And finally, your posture. Your posture, which will radiate confidence and courage and competence on stage, make you feel good, standing or stretched out, and your power pose on stage. So I hope that this presentation would help you to make your next presentation a little more exciting and effective. Because as speakers, the impact we can make depends a lot on our body language. I'm sure that you have complete control on what you say with your words. But are you sure you are in control of what you say with your body? I hope that these few things that we've discussed today will help you to take control, so that at your next presentation, you will be able to let your body talk and become a more effective speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Michelle. Can we all give a round of virtual applause from wherever we are for Toastmaster Michelle and her fabulous session? And let me invite Toastmaster Michelle and Toastmaster Charming to join with me for the Q&A session. And let me also take the opportunity to invite someone who needs no introduction at all, our Program Quality Director, Distinguished Toastmaster Shriyanti Salgado, to join us for the Q&A session and provide her insights for the pathways related questions. So we've had a few questions coming through the registration forms, but you can always ask any questions related to today's session or pathways through the Zoom question and answer session as well, question and answer feature as well. But till then, let's get started with the Q&A session. And the first question of today will go to Toastmaster Michelle. Toastmaster Michelle, is the question from our audience member. I have watched Toastmasters International Speech Contest, and there were really good speakers in there. What are some tips to be a good speaker? I think you've covered some of those points also, but let me repeat the final part of that. What are some tips to be a good speaker?
Right. Thank you, Kasun. So I think there are many things that make a good speaker, but I'd like to share one thing that I think is core and something that is really of essence when we do a speech, and that is the story that we pick. We all talk about how we use stories to convey our messages. And I have learned through my speeches that if I have a story that has impacted my life, that has changed me in some way, that has altered something for me, then there has been enough impact to teach me something. And that is the message that I want to share with the audience as well. So when I have a story like that, that has an emotional connection to me, and I can share that with my audience, that is where that whole connection with your audience happens. So I think to be an effective speaker, we need to have stories, and we do have stories. I mean, every day in our lives, we have multiple stories happening around us. But picking the ones that really have impacted us and that can help our audience also to relate to, I think is what is important. So picking the right story and then, of course, narrating it with your words, with your body language, your voice, and all of that coming together, I think that makes a pretty good speaker. Over to you, Kasim.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Michelle, for your valuable insights. And our next question goes to Toastmaster Charming. How do we prepare or write an attractive speech? How do we prepare or write an attractive speech? Toastmaster Charming.
Yeah, thank you, Kasun. I think that was the purpose of my presentation as well, because like I said in the presentation, to deliver, we need to have a speech. So I personally write my speech, and there are some people who do not write the speech, but they just kind of keep their speech in their mind and they deliver. But either way, what if we select some beautiful words in our speech rather than using it is okay to use simple sentences, simple words. We need to keep it simple, but to make it more attractive, we can think of some of the techniques. If you just analyze some past speakers, champion speakers, we can see they have traveled that extra mile to find those techniques. So the techniques we discussed, if we use them, and there are more, like I said, more rhetorical devices are there. So if we do a research and identify these techniques, and if we use them relevantly, accordingly, I'm sure we can write an attractive speech. So you can just combine it with what Michelle said, put the message, what you want to share, and deliver it in your style. So I'm sure then it will be attractive.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Jamin. And our next question is pathways related. So I would invite DTM Sriyanti to answer this question. If I choose presentation mastery as my first pathway, I will be fulfilling only 2 competencies. Will it be a disadvantage to myself? Should I have to fulfill more than 2 competencies in my first pathway?
Well,
If
not
I choose
necessary. Yeah, I got the question, Cousin. Thank you. Well, it's not necessary that you have to fulfill all the core competencies which are available. So whatever path you choose, go in for it and then start it, because you have actually looked at the questionnaires, you have answered the questionnaires, and they've selected a path for you. However, in selecting the path, this is in general for everyone, in selecting a path, despite the fact that you get a path selected after answering all the questions. If you don't like that path, you can also look at the other paths and select another path. In this particular instance, if you feel this is not enough right now, just as Kasun said right at the beginning, all of us who are members have the option of going in for a second path. So look around, find a path which you feel there are more competencies, not necessary, but you can choose another path and you can simultaneously. You can finish both level 1s, then you can move to level 2. So you take a longer time to finish the two paths, but you finish the two paths simultaneously at the same time. I hope that answered your question, whoever who asked that question. Over to you, Kasun.
Thank you so much, madam. And let me send my next question. Let me direct my next question to Toastmaster Michelle. How to make your speech interesting to the audience, or how to attract the audience towards you? Would you like me to repeat that, Toastmaster Michelle?
No, Kasun, I got the question. I think the best way to attract the audience to you or to connect the audience to you is to be yourself on stage. Because like I said, it's easy for the audience to detect whether you're being sincere, whether you're being authentic, and whether you're being genuine about the feelings, the message you want to share. And I think if that comes out, your presence, your true self comes out on stage, then I think that is where that whole connection with the audience happens. So for me, I think being true to yourself and bringing out that authenticity on stage is what is important. Kasim.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Michelle. Next, Toastmaster Chamin. When it comes to prepared speeches, is it okay if I write a script and practice it? Or should I have to note down only points and practice it?
Right. I think seems like both are okay. Both methods are used by speakers. And first, I have heard in a lot of training programs, I have heard some presenters say that they write every single word, because especially what they say, the people who approve the first, what they say that you can't on the stage, let's say it's a competition, on the stage, when you are delivering the speech, you should know what words you use, exact words, because their point is, um, what if you just use the wrong word when you try to use synonyms or different words? So there they argue that it is therefore it is better to write the entire speech word to word and practice it. And the second, I think some other presenters have mentioned, like they mentioned that sometimes they don't write their speech, so they just write the points only, main points, and they rehearse. For me, I have practiced both, but if I'm going for a competition contest, I would just write my entire speech and practice it. Kasun, I hope I answered that question.
Yes, thank you, Toastmaster Chamin. And next, let me pick up a Pathways related question. So there's a question, what do you mean by Navigator in the levels? So the Navigator is a collection of resources at this point that Toastmasters has prepared for helping new members, not only with Pathways, but with several other aspects of Toastmasters. So it's basically an introduction to Toastmasters for all your new members in the club. So let me just share my screen and show it to you as well. So this page is actually authentication protected. So you need to actually log into the Toastmasters website to be able to see it. And it's just toastmasters.org/the-navigator.
And you'll see here there are some links as well over here now. And we have this PDF document as well over here. So this is what that looks like as well. So you'll have about Toastmasters in general, you have about the Pathways learning experience, you have things about the club executive committee, about meeting rules. All of that information has been provided. So it's like a getting started manual for Toastmasters itself. And in addition to that PDF document, you have so many other links and resources over here that you can take your time and go through. And all of that will help you with getting started with your new members, or with getting the new members in your club get started with Toastmasters as well. And I hope that answers the question raised by our audience member. And let me return to a question for Toastmaster Michelle. How do we find our own style of body language?
Again, I think, Kasun, that it is about being yourself. See, I'm not a humorous speaker. I'm not a humorous person. I'm a very serious person. But I have learned the art of giving humorous speeches because I've tried different things. And finally, I've settled in something that I feel comfortable in. So whether it's how I move on stage, or whether it is how I pronounce my words, or whether it is just a script that I use, whatever it is that brings out that humor through my body language on stage, that is what I use. So I think it's important for us to experiment with different types of body language, because we watch a lot of champion speeches, we watch a lot of other Toastmaster speeches, and I think it's good to infer from all of this and try out different styles, and then you finally settle into something that you are comfortable in. Because it's, see, when you have your own style, nobody else can really copy that, because that is you, and that is what is important. And until you find that, I think it's all right to experiment and try out different ways, but there is no set way of saying, this is what needs to be done, because what will work for me will not work for you. So my advice would be, try as many as possible in your club, with your project speeches, have fun with it, and then you'll know when you find your own style of body language.
Let me add something to that, Kasun. It's true what Michelle says. She is generally a serious person, and she says she's serious. I'm more serious. Having said that, I remember the time that Michelle said, I was surprised to see you at division level contest humorous. So if I could have gone up to the division level and contested at humorous, all of you can try out. Try to speak about everyday things that happen to you and experiment with them, just like Michelle says, and then you will find your niche at some stage or the other. Over to you, Kasun.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Michelle and TM Shriyanti. And next question to Toastmaster Chamin. Our participant is asking us some tips to remember the speech, and he asks if by hearting the speech is effective.
These questions are really hard ones, because they okay, because we can't say like do this, definitely this will work out for you. Even Michelle can add if you have got any points, Michelle. I think one thing I have practiced is I firstly internalize the speech. I ask myself what I expect or what my purpose is. Firstly, I understand, right? Okay, what is the purpose of me doing this presentation or doing this speech? And then I just divide the speech into main areas or main categories. Of course, the way I practice it, after that, I just word by word I practice. At the same time, although I practice word by word, at the same time, I make sure to remember the main points as well. Because just in case I forget a word, if I can remember where I am, I know that how to jump into the next point, next main point. So to remember, I would say it is better to find out the main areas of your speech and the sequence, and then practice like what is coming first, what is coming next, that sequence, that order. And the other thing is just internalize it by asking yourself the question, what am I trying to do with this speech? And continuous practice. That will be a good solution. I hope I answered that question, Kasim.
Michelle, if you could add something to that.
I agree with Chamin. I think when you memorize your speech, and if you tend to forget a word or a sentence or a phrase in between, you tend to get stuck because you need that whole flow of your speech to continue. So instead, internalizing is probably the best way forward, because when you keep on repeating, rehearsing, and practicing your speech, automatically the main points, your storyline gets registered with you. So what happens is, even though you write your speech, you know how the flow goes. So even if you miss a sentence or you miss a phrase, you can continue, you can put your own words at that point and continue the story because you know what comes next. So that probably is a better way of handling it. But then, having said that, some people are really good at memorizing words, keeping it in their mind, and then delivering it word for word. So whatever works for you. But probably the best thing is to have that storyline internalized, so that whatever comes your way, you can continue the story, because your audience will never know, right? What you've written on paper, your audience will never know. So whether you actually say what was on that sheet of paper, or whether you say something impromptu at that moment that resonates with your whole story and message, that really wouldn't affect the uh, whole speech. So yes.
Thank you so much, Chami. And our next question, how do we identify the misuse of body language? How do we identify the misuse of body language? I will direct that to Toastmaster Michelle first.
So like I mentioned, when we are nervous, see, that this is when it happens most of the time. When you're nervous and you don't really know exactly what you have to say, you tend to use unnecessary body language, especially our hands. We don't know what to do with them. So we move them, we wave them around unnecessarily, we keep pacing unnecessarily. Even standing still is a problem. Like I said, we either sway or we rock, or we shift our weight, and all that is because there's this nervous energy building up inside of us. So the trick would be able to control our nervous energy and direct it into purposeful movements and purposeful gestures. And that way, you will avoid all these awkward and distracting gestures and movements on stage. So, my advice would be to identify what you really want to do and direct all that energy towards that, so that you don't have room to unnecessarily use gestures and movements to release that nervous energy.
Thank you, Toastmaster.
Yeah.
Thank you, Toastmaster Michelle. Toastmaster Charming, if there is anything you want to add.
Yes, Kasuna, one thing I have noticed, this from me. I have my own repetitive gestures. Maybe it is like doing this, or maybe doing this. So the tendency is when I deliver a speech, I use those hand gestures more often. When I'm nervous, when I'm too excited, like Michelle mentioned, it is out of my control. So I use them over and over again, which does not add color to the presentation delivery. Instead, it becomes a distraction. So it is better to be aware of what kind of gestures or how we love to or how we like to use our body in a way which helps, in a way, it helps the listener get the message more effectively. So my point is, please be mindful of the repetitive gestures. If you have some, please be mindful and always ask the purpose behind using any of the gestures or any of the movements. If we do it purposefully, I'm sure um, it will help the listener understand what you try to say.
Kasunu, I would like to add something to this. Remember, always your practice ground is your club. And that's where you can really experiment a lot. If you're talking about body language and as well as voice variation, 2 points which you can ask your evaluator to particularly look at your body language, to particularly look at your voice variation. Thereby, each time you give a speech, you will see whether you can improve a little bit more. So be particular about the club speech that you give. That's definitely a practicing ground to improve more and more. Over to you, Kasun.
Thank you, madam. And our next question, I think I will start with you again, Madam Sriyanti. So the question is as follows: how do we improve vocal variety for a person who usually does speeches monotonously? How do we learn to do various voices, and how do we have effective pauses?
One thing which is to be done is sing. Now, don't tell me you all can't sing, right? Because I strongly believe every person who can talk can sing. So starting with the national anthem, start, because you can start softly, then you can start singing loud. Also ask your evaluator to watch out for those different phrases of your speech. Practice with one sentence. Practice makes you perfect, which is really true in this case. Try practicing softer tones, also practicing louder tones. Make very special phrases that you have and then practice them softly. The same phrase, just like Charming explained about working with words, how will it happen if I say I have a car, to saying I have a big blue car? So then you make it different. I mean, I have a car, all right. So what's the big deal that you have a car? But when you want to say I have a big, you always pronounce that I have a big blue car. Your voice also tends to stress on that. So try to have sentences which you start with voice variation. Over to you, Kasun.
Thank you, madam. Toastmaster Amin or Toastmaster Michelle, if there is anything you would like to add.
I think in voice variation, it's something that I have to actually keep practicing with. Your voice projection is important. And I think that has a lot to do with your breathing as well. So doing your breathing exercises and your projection of voice is important. And like Sriyanti said, it's something that you need to practice constantly if you are to speak clearly and audibly. And the variation after that is something easier to do, I think, if you have that full projection voice sorted out first. It's something that I have been working on for a long time, and I still am. So that's why I'm quite confident that that is something that's important.
Thank you, Toastmaster Michelle. And to add to that, we have had a previous session on your speaking voice as well, where Toastmaster Dona Balasurya is going in depth about vocal variation. So the links I have posted on the chat as well, and you can also find it by following the District 82 page on YouTube and accessing the videos on that page. So through that also you can go more in depth about this topic of vocal variation if you like. But again, a big thank you to all our panelists also for providing their insights on this as well. So we'll take one more question for tonight. And I hope that I could ask the presenters, the panelists, to answer the remaining questions on the chat window. So I'll take this question, which has been asked by a few people, where they are requesting for pointers on how to maximize the use of effective body language on virtual platforms, and especially for gestures and eye contact. So we'll start that with Toastmaster Michelle, perhaps.
I'm really a bad person to answer this question because I haven't really perfected the small screen yet. But I think eye contact, something that I learned early in my online presentations, is that we need to look directly into the camera. I think a lot of us make the mistake of looking at ourselves or the people in the gallery view, and when we do that, our eye contact with the audience is broken because then we're looking sideways. So looking into the camera is something important if you want to maintain your eye contact with your audience, your online audience. And with gestures, I think speakers like me who have been used to the stage and who like the big stage, we're used to big gestures. And now, when you have to adapt to a small screen, you have to also adapt your gestures. So we usually say, don't use tilted gestures, use big gestures. But now I think it's the opposite because you need to be able to make maximum use of your performance space is now the little screen. So to be able to make maximum use of it is something that I think all of us have to relearn from the big stage to the screen. And it's something that is work in progress for me. So maybe Chamin or Sriyanti can add more to this.
Did we lose Charmin for a minute? I think so. So let me add to that. Once again, I strongly say your practice ground is your club. Now, I'm very comfortable seated and doing speeches, but I know if you stand up while doing your speech in the club, that is your practice ground. And some of the things that you can do is while you're standing, you can come forward and also move backwards. Then stagecraft your speech and move it from one side, center, and to the other side, because then you can see yourself to see what is the amount you can use. Also use your hands and see that you don't go up. Now see, my hand has gone really up, so no point in making that gesture. So you need to practice in the club. And that's one of the reasons why I strongly advise even the contests which are coming up, ask your people to have even the club contest on Zoom so that you practice your first speech that you deliver on Zoom and make your mistakes there. So when you're selected and you move to the area, you can also improve on it a little bit more. So go ahead, give your name for a club speech and practice, get up, stand up, do something that's definitely on stage that we have to do it. Over to you, Kasun.
Toastmaster Chamin, if you would like to share your insights on this as well.
Kasun, the question was how to use online platform, virtual platform more effectively. Am I right?
Correct.
My connection is really bad. That's why I just kept the video off. Am I audible?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So here is the thing. We need to understand the difference between delivering a speech in front of a real audience and virtual audience or in front of a camera. It is like acting in front of a camera. I think we need to study. That's what Mike Carr did. I think that's what the speakers, if you watched that this last year's championship program, world championship program, I learned a lot. I found out that they had researched a lot on virtual platforms like different directions. If you just watch Micah's speech again and see different like unique gestures, number of gestures he used, I don't think we can use them in front of physical or real audience. They will not be that effective, but they are effective in front of a camera, like Michelle mentioned. So I think we need to, like we got used to Zoom, these kind of online platforms. The next step is learn more about like using this effectively and the right distance and different gestures we can bring. If we just do a study, I'm sure we will be able to come up with a lot of new maybe gestures, new things. Because if we try to deliver the same way, the same speech, maybe the way we deliver in front of a physical audience, I don't think it will be that effective in front of a camera or this kind of a virtual platform. So my answer is better to learn a little bit more about virtual platforms, and please watch last year's competition contest, and there will be a lot to learn from them. um, Hope I answered the question, Kasim.
Yes, thank you so much, Toastmaster Jamin. Thank you so much also to distinguished Toastmaster Shriyanti and Toastmaster Michelle as well for all your valuable inputs throughout the past 1.5 hours. So with that, we are going to conclude our Q&A session. So I have shared a feedback form on the Zoom chat link as well. But before we wrap up, we would also like to hear a few words from our program quality director. So DTM Shriyanti, over to you.
Thank you, Kasun. Well, these programs are held every Friday, and this was a new feature that we started this year because I felt that we could reach a bigger audience. So please also tell your friends, tell your club members to join us. It's personally, I feel it's unfortunate that we had only 70 odd members today when we have 4,000 members in our little island at the moment. I'm not expecting all 4,000 to come. We can actually accommodate only 500. But please do tell your friends as well that this is happening every first Friday. It might be a little bit on the long side when you say 1.5 hours, but you would see that we do bring in some of the best of the best, like Michelle and Charmin today. We also had Roshanta and Donna for vocal variety. And if you do need anything very particular, please do write to us and we will see how we could accommodate that as well. Keep in contact with us and we will try to answer all your questions and accommodate the best presentations for you from the PQD team. Over to you, Kasun.
Thank you so much, madam. And with that, we will need to wrap up our session for today. So we couldn't answer all the questions live, but I believe our two presenters will be taking up those questions on the chat windows and answering them. And while they're doing that, I would also request that you, the audience, could visit the URLs or scan this QR code and go and complete the feedback form so that we can better integrate that feedback into the upcoming sessions. So we will be keeping you informed on our upcoming sessions, but until then, let me once again wish you all a happy new year and a pleasant evening ahead. We'll wrap up our session for today, for tonight, but I hope to see you all